What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it's time for another game preview / game prediction for the 2023 college football season. And our next game preview / game prediction will be Week 1's matchup between the Nebraska Cornhuskers and the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Big-time matchup coming here in week number 1. Both of these teams not ranked in the top 25, but it's a huge matchup here. I mean, it's a Big Ten opener, season opener to start out the college football season. This is not the only Big Ten opener game of the season, or actually in week number 1. We do have Ohio State playing Indiana over the weekend. That game's at 3:30 Eastern Time. And then on Sunday, we got Northwestern taking on Rutgers. So this is not the only Big Ten opener game in week number 1 of the college football season. But this is a big one here. Nebraska and Minnesota not both ranked in the top 25, but this should be a really good, fantastic matchup here in week number 1 of the college football season. But we're going to give you a game preview of this game. We're going to pretty much go through the stats comparisons between these two teams from last year in 2022. Then we'll give you the game summary of who the favorite going into this game will be, and pretty much, going into, or actually giving you the time of the game as well and what day it will be on. And then, of course, we'll give you keys to the game here for both of these teams, how they can win the game pretty much on both sides of the football. And then we'll give you a game prediction at the end of this video, and we'll give you how the game will go down. So let's get right into it here with our game preview / prediction for Nebraska versus Minnesota here in week number 1 of the college football season. So we'll start with the stat comparisons between these two teams. We'll start with Nebraska first. They're coming off a disappointing 4-8 season last year. Of course, fired Scott Frost after 3 games last year. This is a team that only averaged about 22.6 points per game, so I think they were close to being one of the worst offensive teams in the Big Ten last year. Total yards per game, 344.2 yards per total yards last year for Nebraska. So yeah, you could tell this offense was just really not overall that explosive. Passing yards per game, 220.8 yards per passing. Those passing yard numbers are not really that bad for Nebraska, but again, Nebraska just hasn't had that quarterback, for them, the few years that, Scott Frost was there. Maybe they find that quarterback now this upcoming season. Jeff Sims coming over the transfer from Georgia Tech. Can he help them out a little bit on that passing game? And the rushing yards. This is a Nebraska team that struggled to run the football last year. They only averaged about 123.3 yards per rushing last year. So yeah, I don't think they were the worst running team in the Big Ten, but they were really close to that category. So yeah, Nebraska really struggled to run the football last year. And then you look at the offense and defensive rankings, you could tell this offense just really struggled last year. They were 102nd in the country on offense, and then defensively they were 77th in the country. Defense wasn't too terrible, but I just think, both sides of the football for Nebraska, there was just a lot of inconsistency for this team last year. And then Minnesota stats, they're coming off a 9-4 season in 2022, so a really great year for Minnesota. Probably had a chance to make the Big Ten championship game last year. This team averaged 28.2 points per game. So yeah, they weren't really that explosive on offense. If their offense could have probably gotten going last year, I think this Minnesota team probably would have made it to the Big Ten championship. 389.5 total yards last year for this Minnesota team. So they weren't really explosive either on offense. They only averaged about 182.2 yards per passing. So yeah, the quarterback position was really a struggle last year for this Minnesota team. But you look at the rushing game for Minnesota, this is a team that just likes to run the football offensively. They averaged about 207.3 yards per rushing last year. So yeah, Minnesota is a great running team. Probably almost one of the top running teams in the Big Ten, maybe besides Michigan, and maybe besides Ohio State and maybe Penn State and Maryland. But other than that, Minnesota was a great running team. That's all I can say about them. And then offensively, like I said, they weren't really explosive. They were 66 on offense last year, and then defensively, they were dominant on defense. I mean, look at that number, 4th in the country last year on defense, and one of the top defenses in the Big Ten as well this past season. Maybe besides Illinois, but I think this defense deserves a lot of credit for what they did last year. Maybe that defense probably takes a step back year this year, but maybe they're still overall that good. So stat comparison-wise, I mean, both of these teams, record-wise, they were both different records last year. Minnesota was definitely better than Nebraska. But points per game and total yards per game on both sides, on offensively and on the offensive side of the football, Both of these teams were just really struggling in the passing game and definitely in the total yards per game, but Minnesota was definitely a great running team. But there's a difference there in the defense. I mean, Minnesota was just a dominant defense overall. So those are the stat comparisons between these two teams in 2022. Let's now go to the game summary here for this game. And Nebraska, Minnesota, this game will be at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on August 31st, which is a couple days away. And it will be a Fox game here. It's a Big Ten game anyway, so I could see why it's a Fox game. This game's at home for Minnesota. It's in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Minnesota favored in this game by 7 points by a touchdown. And the over and under is at 43.5. So they're calling this one a low-scoring type game. I really think I could see it playing out that way. I mean, both defenses are not pretty even, but Minnesota could probably keep Nebraska from scoring in this game. But again, it's going to be probably a game that can go either way. I think it's probably going to be a low-scoring type game like I just mentioned, but Minnesota, according to the FBI, they're giving, Minnesota about a 67% chance to win this game, which is very high for the FBI. And then for Nebraska, it's about 32%. So the FBI is kind of not giving Nebraska credit. But I think Nebraska has a really good opportunity in this game to start out 1-0. And I think they can really stop that Minnesota offense from scoring a lot of points in this game. So this is the game summary. Again, the game's at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. It's a couple days away on Fox. And it is a home game for Minnesota. Both of these teams not ranked in the top 25. Even though they're not ranked in the top 25, this is going to be a really good game to start out the year for 2023. Let's now go into the keys to the game for both of these teams. For Nebraska, the number one key is take care of the football. They turned the ball over too much last year. Number two is convert on third downs. And then the number three key is offensively, they got to score some points. So Nebraska's got to score some points in this game to win. And then defensively, they got to really stop, Minnesota's offense from running the football. I mean, they just got to convert on third downs as well and take care of the football and not make many mistakes to win this game. And then for Minnesota, they got to run the football in this game, be dominant on defense like they were last year, and they got to run consistent offensive plays. So, I mean, the offense was not good last year for Minnesota either. I think both of these offenses are wanting to score points in this game, but for Minnesota, they are obviously going to run the football in this game, and Nebraska is just probably going to have to just really take care of the football. That's all I can say really much about Nebraska. So, keys to the game here for both of these teams. Again, Nebraska take care of the football, convert on third downs, and then the offense has just got to score some points. And then for Minnesota, is to run the football, be dominant on defense, and then run consistent offensive plays. Those are the keys to the game here for both of these teams. All right, let's now get into the prediction for this game here between Nebraska and Minnesota. Again, this game is coming up in a couple days, so it's not really long days away before starting. It's about 8 o'clock Eastern Time, so it will be a late game. Here's how I think the game's going to go down. I think it's going to be a really short-scoring type game. Maybe the game could be tied at, halftime, perhaps, but I don't really see any team scoring that much in this game. I think both defenses are pretty even. I think Minnesota can keep, Nebraska from scoring a ton of points in this game, but Nebraska's going to have to stop the running game of Minnesota if they're going to win this game. I mean, Minnesota's going to want to run the football in this game, and I think it's just a really close game to call here between these two teams. I think, Minnesota probably covers the spread in this game, but in a close game. I think this game goes into the fourth quarter, but maybe a touchdown late really changes the game here. And I think Minnesota, with them running the football in this game, I think that's going to probably change the game here. They're going to probably wear down that Nebraska defense at the end of the game here. And I think Minnesota really escapes here with a close win over Nebraska. I think the final score of this game goes to 20-13 in favor of Minnesota, so I think they do win by 7 points here, but Nebraska, I think, will score in this game. I think it's just the defense for the Golden Gophers that will hold Nebraska's offense up from scoring points in this game. I don't think Jeff Sims is going to have a bad game in this one, but it's his debut as Nebraska quarterback, so, I mean, we don't really know a whole ton about Jeff Sims. And if he can just stay consistent, or maybe he can run the football and stay out of the pocket, I think, Nebraska could get a little head of steam with him. But again, Minnesota's defense, I think, will be strong this year. And I think they do come away with the win. And I think a late touchdown really changes the game. And plus, I think Minnesota's going to want to run the football in this game as well. So that's my prediction for the Minnesota versus Nebraska game. Again, coming up in a couple days at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on Fox. Look forward to see what happens in this game here between Minnesota and Nebraska. And obviously a Big Ten game here to start out the 2023 college football season. And stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.